Hello everyone, today we're going to be going over the grade 8 grid and sample problems from the 2023 SHSAT Student Handbook. These are for the grade 8, students in grade 8 who are taking the test. This year they gave us 10 grid and problems to work with, so we're going to be going over all 10 of them. Just know that on the real SHSAT there's only 5 grid and problems for the whole math section, right? So that being said, we should get started. Number 1 says that Carol's Alteration Company charges each customer $5 per item plus $3 for supplies. Carol charged the customer more than $50. What is the minimum number of items that Carol altered for the customer, right? So Carol charged the customer more than $50. What does that mean? That means that the total cost of their order has to be greater than 50, right? So knowing that, I would write an equation to find C to find the total cost, right? So what is that equation? Well, it's going to be C, our total cost, is going to equal to $5 times X number of items, right? Because it says $5 per item. That means that for each item, it charges $5. So in here, X is just how many items are there. And it also says there's an additional $3 charge just for supplies, right? And this 3, it doesn't care how many items there are, it's always going to be 3, right? So we know our cost. It's for each item, which is X, you have to give her $5, and you have to also add 3 to that, to whatever you give her, right? So that's C. And conveniently over here, we wrote that 50 is greater than C, and we know that C is equal to this. So what we can do is we could just substitute 5x plus 3 for C. In other words, 50 has to be less than 5x plus 3. And now we can just solve for x, right? So we're going to subtract 3 on both sides. Next, we're going to get 47 is greater than 5x. And it's asking us the minimum numbers. So what is the smallest value of x that'll give us a number greater than 47? That number is going to be 10, because 5 times 10 is 50. And 50 is greater than 47. That is the smallest number that'll give us a number greater than 47. So the answer is 10. So if the customer asks for 10 items, the total cost of that is going to be greater than $50, and that's our answer for number 1. Number 2 says that point N is directly above point M, and point M is 8 feet below the ground, and point N is 40 feet above the ground. What is the distance in feet between the 2 points, right? So I'm going to do this problem down here. I would draw it out. You know, it's it can be confusing dealing with things below ground, above ground, but let's just say that this is the ground, right? In other words, this is 0 feet, right? So here we have 1 point, which is 8 feet, right? This of course is point M, and the distance here is 8, right? And directly above it, right, 40 feet up is point N. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that right here is point N, and this distance is 40 feet. And what they ask us is, what is the distance in feet between the 2 points, right? So what's the distance between N and M? Well, that's going to be 40 feet plus 8 feet. 40 plus 8 is 48. So the total distance between those 2 points is 48 feet. Hope that makes sense. Number 3 asks us, what is the value of negative 2.8 minus negative 1.2 plus negative 0.2? So there's a lot of signs here. So what I would do first before attempting to actually solve it would be just to combine the signs, right? So right here we have negative 2.8 minus negative 1.2. We have 2 minus signs, and we know that once we have a number being subtracted from a negative number, that's the same thing as adding that number, right? So 2 negatives is equal to a positive. So in reality, what this is saying is that's negative 2.8 plus 1.2, right? And then we look over here, it's saying plus negative 0.2. You know that if you add a negative number, you can just get rid of the plus sign and just keep the negative sign. So in reality, we have negative 2.8 plus 1.2 minus 0.2, right? So the fastest way to do this, I'd say just look at this side first. What's 1.2 minus 0.2? It's 1. So now you're left with negative 2.8 plus 1. Um, and that's equal to negative 1.8. That's our answer. So be careful. Pay attention to the sign changes, right? Not the sign change, but just pay attention to the signs, and to avoid confusion and to avoid silly mistakes, I would just rewrite it with the correct signs and then evaluate it. So moving on to number 4, it gives us a graph, and it says that the graph shows the cost in $X for riding a commuter train through Y stops. What is the rate of change for this relationship expressed as a decimal? So it tells us the rate of, it's asking us for the rate of change. Rate of change is the same thing as slope, right? And if you guys don't know, the formula for slope, or rate of change, is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, right? So what it's pretty much asking us to find y2, y1, x2, x1, and just subtract them and then divide them and find that whatever it's equal to, right? So let's look for that. Let's look for a point that this line clearly intersects, right? So from the start, I see that it intersects point 0, 0. It goes through the origin. So here's one of our points. It's going to be 0, 0. And here, I see it intersect this point too. It goes cleanly through that, so we can use these points. And what's that? That's 5, comma 2, right? So let's plug it into our formula. We have 5. Let me erase that. What we really have is 2 minus 0, right? y2, y1, and over x2, which is 5, minus 0, which is our x1. And what this is equal to is 2 over 5. And with 2/5, and 2/5 is equal to 0.4. Because it asks us to express it as a decimal, so we can't do 2.5, 2 over 5. We have to simplify that into 0.4. So moving on to number 5, the table it tells us that the table shows a proportional relationship between the area of a floor and the number of tiles needed to cover the floor. What is the unit rate in tiles per square foot? Right? So another thing, unit rate is equal to slope. So it's asking us the unit rate in tiles, right? Tiles per square foot, right? So let's take one of these rows and let's look at it. What this row tells us is that if you want 80 square feet of floor, you're going to need 520 tiles. And of course, since this is a proportional table, we can use any one of these rows. I just think because you don't have a calculator on this test, it's easier to deal with this because this is the smallest number, right? So you know that 80 square feet is equal to 520 tiles, right? And it's asking us for the unit rate in tiles per square foot. So what per square foot is, it's asking us 1 square foot is equal to how many tiles, right? So in reality, what we're doing is we're dividing this whole thing by 80. So 520 over 80. And what we're doing is we're solving for the amount of tiles needed to cover 1 square foot, right? So once you actually divide it, you do 520 divided by 80, and you're going to get 6.5. So in other words, what we did was we looked at the problem and we figured out what it was asking us, right? We knew that 80 square feet of tiles was equal to 80 square feet was equal to 520 tiles. And it was asking us the unit rate, right? So the slope in tiles per square foot, right? So the unit rate in tiles, that means that we're going to have to multiply the number of tiles by a certain number to get the square footage. And the easiest way to do that is going to be just to divide everything by 80 to get that 1 square foot is equal to 6.5 tiles. In other words, you need it takes 6.5 square tiles, and that's our unit rate, per 1 square foot. Moving on to number 6, it says that a train that usually travels at an average speed of 45 miles per hour was scheduled to arrive in Bloomington in 8 hours. The train arrived 2 hours late. What is the average speed of the train in miles per hour, right? So you know that average speed, you should probably know this formula. Av speed is equal to the distance over time. Or I should say the total distance over the total time, right? In other words, S is equal to D over T. Cool. So what we really need to know is that it gives us the speed. We know S and we know T. What we need to find is D, right? So let's see what the problem tells us at first, right? So it's saying that the train has an average speed of 45 miles per hour. So 45 miles per hour is equal to X distance divided by, it was scheduled to arrive in Bloomington in 8 hours, over 8. So this is our scheduled formula. This is how it was planned, right? And if we want to, obviously we want to solve for X. So we do 45 times 8, and we get 360. So you know that X is equal to 360 miles. So it's supposed to travel 360 miles in 8 hours. But what really happened was that it traveled 360 miles in 8 plus 2 hours. Right? Because it said it came in 2 hours late. So that's 2 hours plus 8 hours. So really what happened was it traveled 360 miles in 10 hours. And now it's asking us for the average speed of the train, right? After it came 360 miles in 10 hours. So we plug this into the formula, right? We're solving for S, speed, and we have 360 divided by 10. We have S is equal to 36 miles per hour. So our answer is 36. So essentially what we did was we found the original distance and we used the speed formula. Moving on, we have number 7. It says the figures above are cylinders, and the smaller cylinder is completely filled with water. The larger cylinder is completely empty. If the water from the smaller cylinder is poured into the larger cylinder without any water being spilled, to what height in inches will the larger cylinder be filled? Okay, so what we're doing is we're filling this whole thing up, and then we're pouring it right into here, and we're seeing how high that water rises. So obviously, most important thing here is to know the formula for the volume of a cylinder. That formula is going to be V is equal to pi r squared times h, right? Now be careful. This problem doesn't tell us r, it tells us d, right? This is the diameter. So in reality, the radius is going to be half that. It's r is equal to d over 2. Right, so it told us the diameter. We need to divide that by 2 to get the radius. So in reality, the radius of this is 2 inches. And the radius of this is 4 inches, right? So it's saying that if the smaller cylinder is completely filled with water, so that means when the volume is at its max. So let's calculate that. We know V is equal to r squared times h, pi r squared times h. V is equal to 2 squared pi times 6 inches. So V is equal to 4 times 6 times pi, which is 24 pi, right? So you know that this is the total amount of volume here in this one. So the way that I would solve this problem is I would imagine creating a second cylinder that has the same volume but a different height, right? So it's going to become more clear later, but the way we do that is we plug 24 into our V equals pi r squared times h formula, and we substitute r with the radius from this cylinder, right? So what we're really doing is we're doing 24 pi is equal to pi 4 squared times h. So 24 pi is equal to pi 16h. 24 is equal to 16h, and h is equal to 24 over 16, which is 1.5. So the height is going to be 1.5. But essentially what we did was we created our own cylinder here, right? So except all we did was we used the radius from this one. So in reality, what we just did was we created our own cylinder that had the same volume as this one and the same radius as this one, but just a different height. And guess what? If it has the same radius as this one, that means that anything in here can fit into here. So in reality, we just calculated the volume of a different container that fits perfectly within this container, which is the same thing, right? So this is essentially going to be the volume of the water, the volume of the water that it takes in this container. And the height for that is 1.5. So moving on to number 8, it says that a deck of cards has red cards and blue cards. The probability of getting a red card in one draw is 0.7. The probability of getting a blue card is 0.3. The tree diagram shows the possible outcomes of the drawing one card, putting it back into the deck, and drawing a second card. What is the probability of choosing a red card and a blue card in 2 draws in either order? That's crucial. So let's see that. So we know that it tells us the probability here. So red, blue, and then blue, red, right? So let's look at the probability of getting red and then blue. So you know that the cards are put back into the deck after you draw them, which means that drawing a red one and drawing a blue one are 2 independent events. What that means is I can draw a red one and that does not affect my probability of drawing a blue one, and that makes those 2 events completely independent. And what that means is that in order to get the probability of them, you just multiply them, right? So 0.7, which is the probability of getting a red, times 0.3, which is the probability of getting a blue after that. So you know the probability, P, is equal to 0.21. Now, here's the trick, right? This is the probability of getting red then blue. What it's saying is in either order. So now we have to find the probability of getting blue then red. Right? So let's look at that. Probability of drawing blue on first try is 0.3. And then you put the card back and now you draw a new one. Now the probability of drawing red is 0.7. Once again, these are 2 independent events because once you draw blue, you put the card back, so it's not altering the probability of getting a red one. There's still the same amount of cards in the deck, right? So now the probability of this is going to be 0.212 again, right? So in total, your probability is going to be 0.21 plus 0.21 in either order, right? Because it's asking in either order. So RB or BR, either one, so you have to add them. So 0.21 plus 0.21 is equal to 0.42. So that's going to be the total probability, right? And remember, you wouldn't multiply these because these 2 events are unrelated, right? And it's asking for the total probability, so you just add them either way. So number 9, it says that Enid and Susie are playing a math game on a computer. A correct answer of a math problem is worth 3 points, and an incorrect answer is worth negative 2.5 points. Enid solved 7 problems correctly and 2 problems incorrectly. Susie solved 6 problems correctly and 5 problems incorrectly. How many more points does Enid have than Susie? Write your answer as a decimal. Right. So let's first calculate how many points Enid has. So that's going to be so he got 7 problems, right? So that's 7 times 3 minus, or actually no, what you're going to do is you're going to add them. So you have his total correct score and you're going to add it with his total incorrect score, which is 2 problems times negative 2.5, right? In other words, this is 21 minus 5, which is 16. So this is Enid's total score. Now we'll find Susie's score, total score. So she solved 6 problems correctly, right? So that's 3 times 6 plus 5 problems incorrectly. So 5 times negative 2.5, right? So you'd calculate that. You know, that's the same thing as saying 18 minus 12.5. Right, and that's the same thing as saying 5.5. So now you have 16 I'll scroll down. You have 16 minus 5.5. That's equal to 10.5. So the answer to this problem is 10.5. I would say this is on the easier side. Just remember the rates of everything, calculate it, make sure you don't mess up your multiplication, and that's it. Right? Last question, number 10. A basketball player makes 140 out of 200 free throws, right? So out of 200 total throws, he makes 140 of his shots. The probability that the basketball player will make the next free throw is X%. What is the value of X, right? So they already gave you that probability. This is the probability, right? Out of 200 shots, he only scored 140. So if you divide this, you get the X% of probability, right? So let's just turn this into a decimal. That's all it's asking us to do. If we divide 140 by 200, add 0. How much is 200 going to 1400? 7 times. So 0.7 is the probability, and that's equal to 0.7 is equal to 70%. So our answer is 70. So once again, it already gave us the probability 140 out of 200, which is a 70% chance. So if we follow this rule, if we follow his already calculated probability, he's going to have a 70% chance of scoring it again. That is all 10 questions that they gave us on the 2023 SHSAT Student Handbook for the 8th grade section, or 8th grader test. The link to this will be in the description below. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comment section below, and feel free to put any suggestions as how I can improve these videos, make it more clear, or just general questions about the SHSAT. I hope you all have a good day. Hope you learned something, and goodbye.